in town. Replay junkie on the ground. 3 and 9 till Virgo puts me down. Trying to top is called in sick up downstairs. I'll take the risk to get that little bit more of the pay. 75 plus 6 feet high. People ask, God tell me why. You'll do a job that'll only bring you down. Brother was a constable, the other son, he was priest. My sister was conscripted for the nurse.
You know, like you come from away and you move to Montreal, and well, you want to suck up,
Yeah,
you know, like some of that. So St-Henri was actually a really good choice because it was probably at that point, me not knowing the city really, really well. It was probably the most bilingual neighborhood I found. So you know, I could be at ease in English, but then still be challenged in French and stuff like that. So like I was living on St. Ferdinand for a couple of years, and beautiful blue collar street, you know, very you know, like tons of nice people, and just one of those. There's not that many of those streets left in Montreal, I don't think anymore. But one of those streets where it was just the whole block is the playground for all the kids.
Yeah.
You know, like they just, you know, and there's like 20 kids, you know, who just live on that block, and you know, you've got, say they're not allowed to go past Saint Antoine or Richelieu, you know, and they just run up and down, tear up and down the streets, and they stop traffic, and you know, play hockey in the streets and stuff like that. And so that was my first introduction, say, to Montreal, or to southwest of Montreal, and fell in love with it then, and pretty much have stayed in the neighborhood for probably the last, I think, almost like 12 years now.
I've lost my hair and I've lost it all. Watching those lead drops fall for bigger paychecks and gloomy stares, you see.
But a lot of people ask us, you know, about Southwest Montreal, and like, how come we have all these songs about this stuff? And it's like, well, that's where this stuff, you know, that's where we live, and where we have lived for years and years. But it's also one of the most interesting neighborhoods for that. You know, it's just there's a lot of, you know, there's stuff happening on the streets. It's not, you don't come home at night and, you know, lock your door and start watching TV. You know, like certainly, especially in the summer. You know, you sit out on the porch, you know, you have a beer, you sit in the back, you hang out, you do meet your neighbors, you know.
12 toxic years in this bump and grind.
You know, Drapeau came in the 50s, and his solution to Griffintown being this, you know, done-in community, you know, where just the dregs of society lived, and, you know, where it was all crime and alcoholism and stuff like this. You know, his solution was to kill the town, abandon the town. He got rid of building permits. He cordoned the whole neighborhood off and actively discouraged people from living there from like the 1950s on. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, naturally the neighborhood right in the middle of the city dies on the vine. And then it just sits vacant in a wasteland waiting for developers to come in. And of course, because of the last 20 or 30 years of the city's politics in general, it took 20 or 30 years for that to happen. But now they come in, they have all this. It's an area of town right in the middle of the city with low property values, and these guys come in and eat the whole thing up, and the city hands them a fucking king's ransom to do whatever the hell they want with it, you know. And they don't put in school, they don't have to put in schools, and they don't have to put in, you know, daycare, and they don't have to put in public pools and public parks. You know, they just come in and boom, drop their creepy freaking condos on everything and ignore, you know, 250 years of history that's been going on there. You know, the downsides of where Griffintown has gotten to even now is because of the condo developments that are in the north part of it, like between Saint Antoine and Notre Dame. You know, it has killed Notre Dame. Like that business street on Notre Dame has been really hard to get successful businesses in there because those businesses only happen if there's businesses on two sides, and if you know, like the residents across the street really don't feed those businesses for some reason. Those businesses seem to get all their business from downtown or St-Henri, or you know, and the people who kind of live there kind of don't.
Let's dance. Let's dance.
And whereas you see all the other stuff, and you know, you've got 200, 300-year-old buildings, and they're still they still work.
Yeah.
You know, and they're still used, and they get recycled too, and they become other things. You know, like a lot of the the sixplexes and they became condos and stuff like that. They used to be like building like proprietor lived in buildings.
Yeah.
Had become condos. Well, at least it's a reuse of that building. We continue, whether that was a really good thing or a really bad thing, we will see.
There's good example around here, like the used building, and
the fire hall on the corner here, which was that was City Hall for, I guess it was St-Henri.
I think so.
I haven't really figured that out yet. But yeah, now it's the library and a community center, and they rent out rooms for meetings and stuff like that. And great reuse, but you don't get that in the buildings they build now. It's one use, that's it. They'll tear it down in 20 years, and what an incredible waste of time.
They prefer to tear it down than...
exactly.
It's more... Okay, let's stop the...
Yes.
John Gern here from Montreal. I've never seen those lead drops fall, but it's blue fingernails and bleeding gums for me.